good day everyone and welcome to my extension room. So for today's video, I'll be discussing one important mathematical concept in discrete mathematics, and that is about mathematical induction. So what is mathematical induction? It is a mathematical technique which is used to prove a statement, a formula, or a theorem to be true for every natural number. So in doing mathematical induction, we need to adhere to these two basic steps. Our step number one is the basis step, wherein it proves that a statement is true for the initial values. So if we find out that the statement or the formula is not true for our initial values, then we can no longer proceed to our next step, which is the inductive step. So it proves that if the statement is true for the nth iteration or number n, then it is also true for n plus 1 iteration or number n plus 1. So let us perform these two steps in this given example. So in our example 1, we call this adding up odd numbers. So we need to prove that 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus up to 2n minus 1 is equal to n squared. So in performing our step number 1, we need to show that it is true for n is equal to 1. So in this formula, n squared, when substituted by 1, kinakailangan it should be equal to the first entry of our given, which is 1. Alright, so let's perform. 1 is equal to n squared. Substituting 1 to n will come up to 1 squared. And 1 squared is equal to 1. 1 is equal to 1. So therefore, we can say that this one is true. So, we have proven that the statement is true in our initial value. So therefore, we can proceed to our step number 2 or the induction process. So we are going to assume that it is true for n is equal to k. So meaning, for our step number 2, we are going to substitute k for all the n in our given. So we'll have 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus up to 2k minus 1 is equal to k squared is true. So that is our assumption. Again, this one is only an assumption kasi hindi pa natin ito na-prove. So after assuming that it is true for n is equal to k, we can now prove that it is true for k plus 1. So the next thing we are going to do is to rewrite our sequence 1 plus 3 plus 5 up to 2k minus 1. So in this case, we are going to add another term kung saan nandun na yung k plus 1 natin. So again, we substituted k plus 1 sa k nung ating last term. So we'll have 2 times k plus 1 minus 1. So since we substituted k to the left side of our equation, so we need to perform this also to the right side of our equation. So yung k square natin dito will now become k plus 1 square because we substituted k plus 1 to our k. Alright, so now let us notice that this part 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2k minus 1 is just the same as to our assumption above. Ang sabi sa assumption natin, this part is equal to k squared. So now, the next thing we need to do is to replace k squared sa part na ito. Natatanggal yung ating sequence, mapapalitan siya ng k squared. Kasi that is according to our assumption. So, substituting replacing k squared to that sequence, we'll have k squared plus, mariretain yung ating last term, which is 2 times k plus 1 minus 1 equal to k plus 1 squared. So nothing changes or nothing changed in the right side of our equation. So now we are going to expand all terms and simplify. So our goal now, kinakailangan maging pareho yung right side at saka left side ng ating equation para masabi natin na true yung ating statement. So it's either ang mag-a-adjust ang gagalawin natin is left side para maging kapareho sa right side, or sa right side para maging kapareho si left side, or pareho natin siyang gagalawin para maging magkapareho yung ating both sides of our equation. So let's expand all terms and simplify. So in expanding, we are going to multiply 2 sa nasa loob ng ating parentheses. So we're going to write k squared plus 2 times k is 2k, then 2 times 1 is 2 minus 1. So in the right side of our equation, we'll just expand this one. So magiging k plus 1 to k plus 1 times k plus 1. So using FOIL method, k plus 1 times k plus 1 is equal to k squared. FOIL method ang gagamitin natin dito. So k squared plus 2k plus 1. So pareho nagbago yung left at saka right side ng ating equation. So now we can now simplify our terms. So ano yung pwede natin i-simplify sa left side ng ating equation? So these terms can be simplified. We can have 2 minus 1, which is equal to positive 1. So our left side will become k squared plus 2k plus 1, and just rewrite our right side, which is k squared plus 2k plus 1. So as you can see, both sides of our equation is now the same. So we can now conclude that 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2n minus 1 is equal to n squared using mathematical induction. Alright, so ganun lang kadali yung steps natin in mathematical induction. So now, for us to learn more about mathematical induction, let us consider our second example. We call this adding up cube. So for this example, we're going to prove 1 cube plus 2 cube plus 3 cube plus n cube is equal to 1 over 4 n squared, the quantity of n plus 1 squared. So first step natin, we are going to get this formula and then substitute 1 for the n, and kinakailangan maging equal siya sa first entry ng ating sequence, which is 1 cube. So now we can have 1 cube equal to 1 over 4 n squared times n plus 1 squared. So substitute 1 tayo sa lahat ng n. We'll have 1 over 4 times 1 squared. Ito yun. N squared will become 1 squared. Then magiging 1 to, so therefore 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 na. So 2 squared dito. Then simplify tayo. 1 cube is equal to 1. And performing this or simplifying this will come up to 1 also. So it is true. So therefore in step number 1, we have proven that the statement or the formula is true for our initial value. Therefore we can now proceed to our step number 2, or to our induction process. So step number 2, let's assume that it is true for n is equal to k. So let's just substitute k for all the n in our given. So we are going to rewrite 1 cube plus 2 cube plus 3 cube plus k cube equal to 1 over 4 k squared, the quantity of k plus 1 squared. And we need to assume that that is true. Alright, next, we're going to prove that it is true also for k plus 1. So let's rewrite this part, 1 cube plus 2 cube plus 3 cube plus k cube. Then mag-a-add tayo ng another term sa left side ng ating equation. We'll have k plus 1 cube. So nanggaling yung k plus 1 cube natin. Diba k cube to, substitute tayo ng k plus 1, so magiging k plus 1 cube tayo. Now, since nag-substitute tayo ng k plus 1 to the left side of our equation, then we also need to perform that sa right side ng ating equation. So, we'll have 1 over 4 times k plus 1 square times k plus 2 square. Saan nanggaling yung k plus 2 square dito? Diba k plus 1? Magkakaroon tayo ng k plus 1 plus 1. Kaya naging k plus 2 squared na yung last term ng ating right side of our equation. So now, let's notice that this part is according sa ating assumption, it is equal to 1 over 4 k square times k plus 1 square. So we are going to replace that part using this. Alright, so we'll have 1 over 4 k square, the quantity of k plus 1 square plus k plus 1 cube. And that is equal to 1 over 4 the quantity of k plus 1 square times k plus 2 square. So now, we are going to multiply all terms by 4 para ma-remove yung ating fraction which is 1 over 4. So we'll have our answer k square, the quantity of k plus 1 square plus 4 times k plus 1 cube, and that is equal to k plus 1 square times k plus 2 square. So since all terms have a common factor which is k plus 1 square, observe, lahat ng ating terms ay merong k plus 1 square. So, we can cancel this. So, para natin siyang makancel by multiplying all our terms by 1 over k plus 1 square. Alright, so multiplying all terms by 1 over k plus 1 square will come up to this shorter terms natin. So we'll have k square plus 4 times k plus 1, and that is equal to k plus 2 square. So now, let's multiply or expand our terms. We'll have k square plus 4 times k is 4k, and 4 times 1 is 4, equal to the expanded form of these terms, which is k squared plus 4k plus 4. So as you can see, the left side and the right side of our equation is now the same. So therefore, we can conclude that our given, which is 1 cube plus 2 cube plus 3 cube plus n cube, is equal to 1 over 4 n squared plus n plus 1 square using mathematical induction. Alright, so that's all. And if you have your questions, you can post it in our comment section, or you can directly approach me via Facebook. So now, I am challenging you to try these activities. So screenshot these activities and try it on your own. Thank you for listening.